The chandelier flickered slightly above the marble table, refracting soft light onto a dozen tense faces. The air held that charged stillness, the kind just before a fuse hits flame. 12 executives, perfectly dressed and painfully alert, surrounded the obsidian glass boardroom table like vultures orbiting a dying deal. Pens clicked, thumbs twitched, bottled water remained untouched. Every pair of eyes was locked on the man at the head of the table, Sheikh Hassan al-Rashid. His suit was silk gray, no wrinkle in sight. His cufflinks, platinum, engraved. He leaned back, hands steepled under his chin, watching his translator scribble with shaking fingers. Hassan's words had just been delivered in an obscure Gulf Arabic dialect smooth as smoke. Nobody replied. Not yet. And then, from the wall, a voice, quiet but razor-sharp. "Excuse me, Sir Bot. What you just said, they won't see it coming. But if they sign, they'll lose control of everything." It wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. Every head snapped toward the source. Even the chandelier seemed to stop swaying. The voice had not come from the legal team, nor the aides, nor the translators, nor even the high-priced consultants flown in from D.C. It came from a woman standing against the far wall, barely noticeable until now. She wore the standard hotel uniform, pressed navy blouse, modest shoes, a silver tray of untouched water bottles balanced in her hand. Her name tag read, Maya. She didn't flinch, not even as 12 corporate titans stared like she detonated a bomb in the center of the table. Sheikh Hassan's eyes locked onto her. He was not used to being interrupted, certainly not by someone holding a tray. "You speak Arabic?" he asked in crisp, measured English. Maya nodded. "Yes." His eyes narrowed. "In my dialect?" "Yes," she replied, still calm. "And I understand the difference between intention and manipulation." Someone exhaled sharply, another whispered, "Who the hell is she? Who the—" "She's just a server," a voice hissed from the far end of the table. Maya took a step forward, placed the tray gently on the side table, and turned fully to face the room. She stood tall, not aggressive, not apologetic, just unshakably steady. "What you said," she continued, still addressing the Sheikh directly, "about leaving room for adjustment based on local compliance. It sounds diplomatic, but the way you phrased it? It grants unilateral authority to override any agreement. That isn't compliance, it's an override clause." The translator beside Sheikh Hassan went pale. His notes trembled in his hand. The room waited. Hassan studied Maya for a long, breathless moment. Then, "Do you have legal training?" "I have a master's in international finance," she replied, switching smoothly back to Arabic. "And I spent 3 years in Abu Dhabi with the National Sovereign Fund, reviewing risk in joint asset agreements." "Why are you here?" he asked, cold and pointed. "My mother got sick. I came back to care for her. This job pays the bills." His gaze sharpened. Something flickered behind his eyes. Annoyance, maybe curiosity. "You interrupted me in front of my counterparts, then accused me of deception." "I didn't accuse you," Maya said. "I clarified, respectfully." "You are a maid," he replied icily. "You don't speak in this room." A white-haired American executive leaned forward. "Your Excellency." Another voice, Danielle from Landstone, cut in sharply. "Wait, she's right." The silence grew louder. "She's absolutely right," said Robert Malloy, second from the left, adjusting his collar nervously. "That clause would leave us exposed." Sheikh Hassan's translator wouldn't meet his gaze. Hassan's voice dropped low, deadly calm. "How long have you known she was right?" The translator stammered. I didn't." "Leave," the Sheikh said. The translator didn't argue. He grabbed his case and fled the room. Maya stood still. Her palms were sweating, but she didn't move. Her pulse thudded in her ears, but her face stayed calm. The Sheikh turned to Robert Malloy. "This meeting is over. We reconvene tomorrow noon. Bring someone who understands the document." He stood and walked out without another word. Maya backed out slowly toward the service door. No one stopped her. A few executives were still staring, some in disbelief, some in a new kind of respect. Outside in the hallway, she exhaled for the first time in what felt like hours. The elevator doors closed around her like the end of a scene she never meant to be in. Her shoulders dropped. Her hand trembled as she pressed the basement level. By the time the doors opened, the adrenaline was fading and something else was taking its place. Dread. Was she about to be fired? In the back corridor near the staff lockers, she nearly collided with Carmen, a senior housekeeper in her 50s who had worked the hotel longer than anyone could remember. Carmen's eyes went wide. "Girl," she whispered, "what the hell did you just do?" Maya couldn't help a half smile. "I might have said too much." Carmen raised a brow. Too much? Or just enough? "I don't know yet." They stepped into the employee lounge, but something was off. Her supervisor, Mr. Jenkins, balding, red-faced, always nervous, was pacing like the walls were collapsing. "There you are," he snapped. "Upper management's already called 3 times. What the hell did you think you were doing?" "I was just trying to stop something dangerous." "You embarrassed the hotel," he hissed. "You embarrassed the board." "No," Maya said. "I protected them." He stopped, blinking. The door opened again. Everyone turned. Standing there was Veronica Ellison, the general manager of the Empire Grand. Elegant, cold, legendary in the hospitality world. No one ever saw her outside her office unless something seismic was happening. "She stays," Veronica said. Mr. Jenkins opened his mouth, but nothing came out. "She showed more insight in 5 minutes than some lawyers show in 5 months, Veronica continued. "She's off floor duty for the rest of the day. Maya, my office, 3 o'clock. Maya stared at her, frozen. "Yes, ma'am." Veronica turned and walked out. Carmen leaned in close. "Baby," she whispered, "you just made the world tilt." Maya sat in the locker room alone for a long while, staring at her reflection in the smudged mirror. Her hands were still shaking. She had spoken. Really spoken. Not whispered. Not complied. Not disappeared into the walls like she'd trained herself to. She didn't know what was coming next. A reprimand? A job offer? Nothing. But for the first time in years, she had refused to be invisible, and someone powerful had listened. 3 minutes to 3 p.m. Maya stood outside the glass-paneled office on the 31st floor. The carpet was soft beneath her shoes, the kind that made people walk quieter like a museum or a church. She smoothed her uniform again, though nothing could hide the faded seam near her collar or the small snag at her cuff. Behind the door was the woman who could end her job with a sentence, or change her life with one. The door clicked open. "Maya," Veronica said, her voice cool as silver. "Come in." The general manager's office was wide, sparse, and modern. Floor-to-ceiling windows looked out across the Hudson, glittering in the late afternoon haze. On one wall, a single-framed photograph, a much younger Veronica, shaking hands with President Carter. Maya entered slowly, hands clasped in front of her, unsure where to stand. "Sit," Veronica said, motioning to a leather chair. Maya obeyed. Her palms were sweating again. The silence was thick and she could hear her own breath. "I don't know, it's been a long time." Veronica opened a drawer, pulled out a thick binder and set it on the desk between them. "The same contract, annotated draft. I want you to go through it, flag what needs flagging. You've got 24 hours. Maya blinked. "Why me?" "Because you caught what no one else did, and because power listens when the truth is spoken with precision." Maya placed her hands on the binder. Her fingers brushed the paper as if it were alive. "Thank you." "You're not being offered a job," Veronica said. "You're being offered a test." That night, Maya sat at the kitchen table in her small Queens apartment. The room was warm but old, radiator hissing in the corner, light bulb flickering every few minutes. The walls still smelled faintly of her mother's jasmine lotion. She brewed tea, unzipped the binder, and began. Clause by clause, she read. The same patterns emerged. Vague ownership definitions, terms buried in footnotes, compliance phrasing with open loops, strategic ambiguity disguised as diplomacy, ownership disguised as partnership. She reached for a highlighter, then another. Sticky notes in different colors soon fanned out like flags across the contract. At midnight, she stood and stretched. Her back ached. Her eyes were dry. She poured another cup of tea and stood by the window. Outside, the city glowed like a furnace. Orange haze above rooftops, headlights tracing silent lines across bridges. Somewhere out there, that contract could shift the balance of power in boardrooms, in cities, in countries. If signed as is, someone would bleed. Maya turned back toward the table. She sat down again. She wasn't done. The next morning, she stood outside Veronica's office at 7:50 a.m. The binder was in her arms, marked, tagged, combed clean. Veronica opened the door. "You're early." "I finished it," Maya said. She handed the binder over. "I flagged 10 sections with legal manipulation, 5 with cultural misinterpretation, and 3 with overreach that could spark international arbitration." Veronica flipped it open, scanning the notes. She stopped on a margin comment. "Retroactive ownership clause. Disguised override. Violation risk under FIC Article 14. She flipped again. "You worked all night?" "I worked until it made sense." Veronica closed the binder slowly. "You've still got it." Maya smiled faintly, but her hands remained clasped. Veronica's voice softened. "You remind me of someone." Maya tilted her head. "Who?" "Your father, James Williams." Maya froze. "You knew my father?" "I did. He drafted the emergency financial reform proposals back in '98. Quiet man, brilliant, never cared for credit." Maya swallowed. "He used to say justice was a long road, but someone has to start walking." Veronica smiled, just slightly. "It appears you inherited more than his eyes." There was a knock at the door. An assistant leaned in. "Ma'am, the Schick's team is requesting Maya be present at the renegotiation. Noon." Veronica turned to Maya. "Looks like your voice carries further than you thought." At 12:01, Maya walked back into the same conference room she had once entered invisible. This time she wore a pressed gray dress. Her hair was up, no tray in hand, only a leather binder. 12 men sat at the table again. This time they looked up, not past her, at her. Some skeptical, some respectful, none dismissive. Sheikh Hassan sat at the head, alone, no translator. "Miss Williams," he said. "Your Excellency," she replied, in Arabic. He gestured to the seat beside him. "Sit." She did. The negotiation began. Robert Malloy spoke first. "With Miss Williams' input, we've annotated the document. There are several clauses that require clarification." The Sheikh nodded. "Let's begin." For the next 2 hours, Maya spoke sparingly. But when she did, the room shifted. She translated tension into language. She pointed to ambiguity and offered precision. She listened. Then she spoke. Once, while rephrasing the compliance clause, she said, "In Arabic, we say you cannot plant olive trees in foreign soil without knowing the seasons. You must learn the land before you tend it." The Sheikh looked at her, and for the first time, he smiled. When the break came, Maya stepped into the hallway to breathe. The walls were cold stone. Her pulse was racing again. Footsteps approached behind her. A man in a dark suit, Michael Trent, junior partner. "You don't belong here," he said flatly. Maya turned. "Excuse me? You don't have clearance, and you sure as hell don't have a seat at this table just because you corrected a sentence." Maya didn't answer. She met his eyes. "My clearance," she said quietly, "is in the footnotes you didn't read." Veronica appeared beside them. "Mr. Trent," she said sharply, "if you have concerns about staff assignments, take them up with me." Trent backed off. Veronica turned to Maya. "You okay?" Maya nodded. "He's just afraid of change." "Good," Veronica said, "because change is happening, and it's looking right at you." Back inside, Maya proposed a redraft of the clause using dual jurisdiction terms, respecting both local law and corporate structure. The Sheikh nodded. By the end of the meeting, they had a new document. As the executives stood to leave, Sheikh Hassan remained seated. "Maya," he said. She paused. You spoke truth to power. That is dangerous. And rare. I didn't mean to speak, Maya replied. I just couldn't stay quiet. He reached into his pocket, drew out a coin. Old, etched, faded Arabic script. In my country, when someone saves a negotiation, we give them a token, not as payment, as memory. He placed it in her hand. Maya held it gently. Thank you. That night, back in her apartment, she placed the coin next to a photo of her father. In the picture, he stood at a protest, holding a worn leather briefcase. Behind him, a sign. Do right, even if you're alone. The coin caught the lamplight just right. It shimmered like something sacred. Maya touched the compass that still sat on her bookshelf, and for the first time in years, she didn't feel like she was trying to catch up to her own life. She was in it, and she was steering. Veronica remained behind her desk, arms folded. You worked in Abu Dhabi? Yes, ma'am. Why did you leave? My mother was sick, stage 4. I came home to care for her. And after she passed, I tried to get back in, but there was a long gap on my resume. And people stopped seeing my degrees, they just saw the name, the uniform, maybe the color too. Veronica's expression didn't change. She tapped a few keys on her keyboard. Maya heard the soft whir of a search loading. I looked you up, Veronica said. You weren't bluffing. A pause. 3 years, Risk Compliance Division, National Sovereign Fund. You oversaw contracts worth over $100 million. Maya nodded once. You could have stayed quiet yesterday. I couldn't, Maya replied. They were going to sign something that would have stripped them of control. I knew exactly how it would go, clause by clause. Veronica leaned back in her chair. You want back in? Maya hesitated. Maya stood outside the door to the 35th floor, Legal and Risk Department. The glass pane was frosted, etched with the words she used to walk past every day while pushing carts of mineral water and half-eaten pastry trays. Now her badge beeped green. Inside, the floor buzzed like a trading pit. Muted voices, fingers flying over keyboards, whiteboards scrawled with arrows and red deadlines. Phones chirped. Printers hummed. Maya stepped inside. Half a dozen heads turned. Some stared. Others blinked and turned away. At the far end stood Harold Keene, the firm's legal counsel, mid-60s, precise in posture, arrogant in tone, standing beside Veronica, who gave Maya a small nod. Maya, Veronica said. Glad you're here. We've started reviewing draft clauses for the next 2 deals. I'd like you to audit the equity and oversight sections. Harold didn't look up from his tablet. She's not a licensed attorney, he muttered. Maya didn't flinch. I'm a licensed analyst, specializing in international risk compliance and financial traps embedded in language. Veronica raised a brow. She's not here to argue law, she said. She's here to see what the lawyers missed. Harold made a small, unimpressed grunt and walked off. Maya sat at a terminal. A sleek screen blinked to life, and a set of encrypted draft documents appeared. She began to read. In a past life, she would have fetched coffee for this room. Now she was auditing documents that could move billions across borders. The first contract was thick with dense legalese, a supply chain agreement for energy exports. On page 19, she saw it, buried in boilerplate. If compliance metrics shift due to external market variance, jurisdictional discretion may revert to primary board oversight. She highlighted it. Disguised override, potential clause abuse. The next contract was worse. In the intellectual property annex, a clause implied surrender of brand rights in perpetuity under loosely defined partnership terms. Maya flagged it immediately. By mid-afternoon, her eyes burned. Across from her, a younger analyst, Cynthia, early 30s, expensive blouse and fake politeness, leaned in with a smirk. Just curious, she said quietly. How does one go from housekeeping to executive consultant? Some kind of DEI push? Maya didn't even look up. I guess when you know what a retroactive override looks like in Arabic, the door opens. Cynthia's lips twitched. She backed off. Maya kept reading. At 5:42 p.m., she closed her notes and clicked send. a report titled Contractual Risk Anomalies, Cultural Friction, Legal Vulnerabilities, and Compliance Hazards. To Veronica Ellison, CC, Risk Counsel. 15 minutes later, her phone buzzed. A text from Veronica. Private meeting. 7 p.m. Top floor. Alone. That wasn't normal. You speak truth with precision. That makes you useful and a threat. He reached into his pocket and pulled out an envelope. Inside, a formal consulting contract with Al Rashid Capital's U.S. division. Generous retainer. Remote flexibility. Global access. This is yours if you want it. You've already earned it. Maya stared at the paper. It was more than a job. It was status, authority, power. I don't know, she admitted. The system still feels rigged. He nodded. That's why I need people like you to unrig it. Back in her apartment, Maya sat cross-legged on her couch, the envelope unopened beside her, her father's compass beside it. She didn't sleep that night. The next morning, she entered Al Rashid Capital's downtown office, the American branch, black glass, marble lobby, air chilled by silence. This was the deep end. She was swimming in it now. The receptionist handed her a temporary badge and gestured to the elevators. Your suite's on 18, risk review. Mr. Warren is expecting you. Maya froze. Philip Warren, the same man who had whispered weeks ago that truth has sharp edges. She stepped into the elevator. When the doors opened, Philip was already waiting. Consultant now, are we? He said lightly. Maya nodded. I am. Maya left the legal floor in silence. No one said goodbye. By the time she stepped into the penthouse suite, dusk had painted the sky crimson. The Empire Grand's rooftop penthouse, rarely used, felt like a hotel inside a cathedral. Glass walls, soft candlelight, jazz playing from somewhere unseen. And in the center of it all, Sheikh Hassan al-Rashid. He stood beside the balcony, silhouetted against the city, no guards in sight. Maya, he said, gesturing to a chair. Please, sit. She hesitated. I didn't expect you. I didn't want to be seen downstairs. He sat across from her, hands resting lightly on his knees. We finalized the amended contracts today. Because of you, we prevented what would have become, in time, a quiet war. Maya nodded. It's what I was trained for. Once. He studied her carefully. I've had many advisors. Few I trust. Fewer I remember. But you carry something dangerous. Truth? She said softly. He smiled, not warmly but knowingly. You speak truth with precision. That makes you useful. And a threat. He reached into his pocket and pulled out an envelope. Inside, a formal consulting contract with Al Rashid Capital's U.S. division. Generous retainer, remote flexibility, global access. This is yours if you want it. You've already earned it. Maya stared at the paper. It was more than a job. It was status, authority, power. I don't know, she admitted. The system still feels rigged. He nodded. That's why I need people like you to unrig it. Back in her apartment, Maya sat cross-legged on her couch, the envelope unopened beside her, her father's compass beside it. She didn't sleep that night. The next morning, she entered Al Rashid Capital's downtown office, the American branch. Black glass, marble lobby. Air chilled by silence. This was the deep end. She was swimming in it now. The receptionist handed her a temporary badge and gestured to the elevators. That night, she opened the secure database. Filtered Zurich. Date range past 18 months, one result. Your suite's on 18, risk review. Mr. Warren is expecting you. Maya froze. Philip Warren, the same man who had whispered weeks ago that truth has sharp edges. She stepped into the elevator. When the doors opened, Philip was already waiting. Consultant now, are we? He said lightly. Maya nodded. I am. He smiled without humor. Then be careful where you aim your heels. You're stepping on a lot of toes. He walked away before she could answer. By midday, Maya had a desk, credentials, and 2 redacted contracts to review. Her badge buzzed at certain locked doors, glitching, forcing her to wait while a receptionist reactivated her access. Files she requested came back incomplete. Something, or someone, didn't want her seeing the full picture. At 3:15 p.m., she overheard voices outside the copy room. She flagged the Zurich transfer, took it straight to Veronica. She wasn't supposed to dig that deep. The door creaked. Maya froze. Zurich? She hadn't seen anything labeled Zurich. She hadn't seen anything labeled Zurich. That night, she opened the secure database. Filtered, Zurich. Date range, past 18 months. One result, an internal asset file from a Shell subsidiary. Footnote, environmental reallocation, $23,000. No timeline, no project, no approval code. It looped through Cyprus, then Singapore, then Zurich. It didn't smell like an error. It smelled like a cover-up. Her pulse picked up. She copied the file to a secure drive, encrypted it, and sent the data to Veronica under a burner alias. Moments later, her screen flickered. Then, black. Shutdown override. Not her doing. She stared at the dead monitor. Behind her door, soft footsteps in the hallway. Slow. Deliberate. Someone knew. The monitor was still black. Not asleep. Dead. Maya didn't move. Outside her apartment door, the footsteps had stopped. One step. Pause. Another. Then stillness. The floorboards in the hallway creaked. Slow. Heavy. Too deliberate to be a neighbor. Too still to be casual. Her breath caught. She reached down silently and opened the bottom drawer of her desk. Inside, her father's old silver flashlight. Metal. Solid. She wrapped her fingers around it like a baton. Another knock. Not polite. Heavy. Authoritative. One knock. Silence. Maya moved to the peephole, barely breathing. A man stood outside. No uniform. No delivery. Dark coat. Blank face. He wasn't reading the door number. He was waiting. After a moment, he stepped closer and looked straight into the peephole. Maya jerked back. A long silence followed. Then footsteps, fading slowly. She waited 10 full minutes before moving. Not to the door, to the back closet. She pulled up the loose floorboard she'd repaired herself 3 winters ago. Beneath it, she slipped the encrypted USB drive into a Ziploc bag and placed it inside the hollow. Covered it. Replaced the board. Smoothed the edges. The hum of her computer tower was still active, even though the monitor had gone dead. Whatever had shut her down had reached into the system itself. She didn't sleep that night. She didn't stay. At 6 a.m., she was at a cafe 2 blocks away, sipping coffee that tasted like rust and waiting for the Wi-Fi to connect. She used a prepaid phone. Burn number. She texted Veronica. System compromised. Zurich flagged. Suspect surveillance. Must meet. Off-site. Secure. Burn this phone. The reply came back. Elmhurst Library. Basement. Noon. Small conference room. Come alone. At 11:45 a.m., Maya stood outside the library, a building she used to visit with her mother, a place of quiet corners and laminated floors. It felt sacred now. She entered through the back and descended the old marble staircase to the basement. Veronica sat at a small table. No laptop, no files, just a notepad and a pen. You weren't paranoid, she said. My internal logs show someone tried to breach my access last night, 3:08 a.m. I found Zurich, Maya said. 23 million, labeled environmental reallocation. No project attached, no signature, routed through Cyprus and Singapore. Veronica didn't flinch. I suspected it, she said. Now we confirm it. I traced it to a Shell firm tied to Northbriar Equity. Veronica's jaw tightened. Philip Warren. And maybe others, Maya added. I didn't get far enough. We move now, Veronica said. Quietly, we finish the trail and we lock it. Do we go to compliance? No, Veronica replied, voice cold. Compliance is compromised. Then who do we take it to? Veronica looked directly at her. The Schick. That night, Maya returned home through the back stairwell. Her apartment was silent. She moved carefully, checking door seams and window latches. Everything looked untouched. She lifted the floorboard, retrieved the USB, clutched it like a fuse. Then the living room light clicked on. Philip Warren stood by the bookshelf. He held one of her tea mugs in his hand. "Well done," he said calmly. "I told you. Truth cuts both ways." Maya didn't flinch. "You broke into my home." "I intervened," he said. "In what?" "In your crusade." He set the mug down gently. "Here's how this ends. You disappear. 6 figures, a clean passport, somewhere warm, somewhere safe." She stared at him. "You think I'm afraid of you?" "I think you're smart enough to know how power works. You steal money from poisoned communities. You write lies into footnotes. That's not power. That's fear in a silk suit." His smile faded. "You take this to the board. You get buried in legal action, media silence, HR shutdowns. Veronica, she gets replaced. You go back to cleaning brass." Maya stepped forward, hand in her pocket. She clicked the small recorder clipped to the inside of her coat, one she'd started carrying 3 days ago. Philip looked down. "That won't hold in court. It doesn't need to." She stepped closer. "It just needs to make it to the shik." For the first time, his expression cracked. He turned and left without a word. The next morning, Veronica received a courier envelope, no return address. Inside, a USB, a handwritten note in block letters. "The rest is up to you." The recording played in full, Philip's voice calm and calculating. Veronica brought it straight to the shik. He listened in silence. Then, "We end this." The boardroom on the 37th floor of Al Rashid Capital's Manhattan headquarters had never been this quiet. Not even during death announcements. Not even when stocks fell. Maya sat at the far end, flanked by Veronica on one side and Amal Fareed, a risk specialist flown in from Dubai, on the other. Before them, a half-moon of board members, senior counsel, and regional executives all facing the front screen. On the screen, frozen mid-word, was Philip Warren's voice in full stereo clarity. "I think you're smart enough to know how power works." Then silence. Then, "That won't hold in court." Click. The recording ended. No one moved. Maya looked at the faces in front of her. Some shocked, some livid, some pretending they didn't just hear what they heard. In the center chair, the shik leaned forward. "When did you record this?" he asked Maya. "The night he broke into my apartment," she replied. Calm, crisp. "After I traced the Zurich transaction and sent a redacted ledger to Veronica. You're presenting an internal recording, circumstantial metadata. This doesn't meet evidentiary standards." Veronica turned, sharp. "You were copied on several of the emails from Northbrier's Cayman node." Harold blinked. "That's ridiculous." Maya opened her tablet, swiped. Screen lit up behind her. An email thread. Warren, Covington, time-stamped, labeled, "Diversion routes, secondary." Covington stood slowly. "I want legal review." The shik's voice sliced through the room. "No." Everyone turned. "You've had your legal review, you engineered it." Maya exposed what a dozen teams ignored or concealed. "This is not a legal failure. It's a moral one." He stood. "Mr. Covington, Mr. Warren, you are both hereby suspended, effective immediately. All access revoked. A forensic sweep of your devices begins now." 2 security officers entered quietly. No uniforms, no commotion, just presence. Covington didn't argue, but his face turned to stone as they let him out. No one said a word. When the door closed, the shik turned to Maya. "You've done more than bring truth to light, you've brought rot to surface." She nodded, swallowing the weight. "I couldn't walk away from it." "I know," he said. Veronica stood. "We've drafted a motion to create a standing ethics oversight panel, one that reports independently to the board and the shik. Maya will chair the interim version." Maya blinked. "I didn't." "You did," the shik said. "You earned it." Some board members looked uneasy, others nodded, but no one objected. In the hallway after the meeting, Veronica handed Maya a slip of paper. "Welcome to the storm." Maya looked at the note. It was a passcode to a server drive. Inside, Every contract Philip Warren had touched in the past 5 years. Every deal. Every clause. Every name. Maya took the elevator down alone. By the time she reached her apartment, her phone had 11 new messages, 3 media inquiries, 2 unknown numbers, 1 encrypted text from Amal. You lit a fuse. Maya stood by the window looking out at the city. Everything was still, but underneath it, movement. Veronica opened a folder and slid it across the table, a copy of the full ledger with footnotes highlighted. Zurich, 23 million, routed through Cyprus and Singapore, tied to Northbriar Equity, a firm advised by Philip Warren. Another page slid out. And here, payments marked environmental reallocation originally promised for tribal water remediation, never delivered. Sheikh Hassan closed his eyes. I trusted that man, he said. I listened to his counsel for years. Maya didn't reply. She didn't need to. Veronica turned to the board. Elijah Rowe, former controller, corroborated the missing funds and provided internal memos hidden from standard audits. We have timestamps, login records, signature logs, all pointing to Mr. Warren. A regional partner stood up. I moved to suspend Philip Warren immediately, pending full forensic audit. Seconded, someone said. No, said a voice from the far end of the room. Harold Covington, legal counsel, unmoved. You're presenting an internal recording. Circumstantial metadata. This doesn't meet evidentiary standards. Veronica turned, sharp. You were copied on several of the emails from Northbriar's Cayman node. Harold blinked. That's ridiculous. Maya opened her tablet, swiped. Screen lit up behind her. An email thread. Warren, Covington, time-stamped. Labeled, diversion routes, secondary. Covington stood slowly. I want legal review. The Sheikh's voice sliced through the room. No. Everyone turned. You've had your legal review. You engineered it. Maya exposed what a dozen teams ignored or concealed. This is not a legal failure, it's a moral one. He stood. Mr. Covington, Mr. Warren, you are both hereby suspended, effective immediately. All access revoked. A forensic sweep of your devices begins now. 2 security officers entered quietly. No uniforms, no commotion, just presence. Covington didn't argue, but his face turned to stone as they let him out. No one said a word. Maya stood by the window looking out at the city. Everything was still, but underneath it, movement. When the door closed, the Sheikh turned to Maya. You've done more than bring truth to light, you've brought rot to surface. She nodded, swallowing the weight. I couldn't walk away from it. I know, he said. Veronica stood. We've drafted a motion to create a standing ethics oversight panel, one that reports independently to the board and the Sheikh. Maya will chair the interim version. Maya blinked. I didn't. You did, the Sheikh said. You earned it. Some board members looked uneasy, others nodded, but no one objected. In the hallway after the meeting, Veronica handed Maya a slip of paper. Welcome to the storm. Maya looked at the note. It was a passcode to a server drive. Inside, every contract Philip Warren had touched in the past 5 years, every deal, every clause, every name. Maya took the elevator down alone. By the time she reached her apartment, her phone had 11 new messages, 3 media inquiries, 2 unknown numbers, 1 encrypted text from Amal. You lit a fuse. Maya stood by the window looking out at the city. Everything was still, but underneath it, movement. The file directory opened like a vault, quiet, orderly, and full of ghosts. Maya sat at her desk in the secure room on the 35th floor, the passcode Veronica had given her now unlocking a web of encrypted contracts, private memos, and metadata logs all bearing the digital fingerprints of Philip Warren. She scrolled. Every document signed by him, every clause adjusted after hours, every suspicious consulting firm linked through shell companies. But it was one name buried deep in a scanned ledger that made her freeze. Harold Covington wasn't just copied on threads. He had signed off on a redirected fund labeled Midwest Infrastructure Community Support. But the money never arrived, because it never went there. Instead, the funds had looped back to a Delaware shell entity, Legacy Holdings LLC, and then disappeared into asset reallocation via the Caymans. The date of the transfer? 3 days before the Sheikh's first U.S. visit. This wasn't sloppiness, this was orchestration. Maya leaned back. The hum of the server felt like it was inside her bones. She picked up her phone. Text to Amal and Angelina. Found deeper signature trail, not just Philip. Harold authorized Midwest redirection. Request private meet. Elijah Rowe may have originals. Reply from Amal. Elijah trusts me, I'll reach out, be careful. That night, Maya sat with Veronica in a dark corner booth of a wine bar in Chelsea, the kind of place where executives whispered when they couldn't afford lawyers. Veronica sipped scotch. Maya pushed a ginger ale back and forth. Legacy Holdings, Maya said. Delaware, Cayman, Zurich Loop. Every paper trail ends in shadow. Veronica didn't blink. How deep? I don't know, Maya admitted, but deep enough that they used a fake environmental initiative to launder nearly 40 million. Veronica leaned in. We need someone who is inside, someone with paper. Elijah, Veronica nodded slowly. If he talks, this doesn't end at Covington, it reaches above the board. 3 days later, Maya, Amal, and Angelina sat in a modest house in Queens that smelled of lemon polish and worn books. Elijah Rowe, now retired, stood over a wood coffee table covered in lockboxes and yellowed folders. I always knew I'd be opening this again, he said, not for revenge, for justice. He placed a box on the table, clicked the latch. Inside, original ledgers, whistleblower drafts never submitted, internal memos about fund diversions marked with Harold's initials. One memo read, Move $12 million to Legacy, via community anchor route, bury in Phase 2 budget notes. Maya's skin went cold. One folder included invoices that confirmed the reallocation was intended for Native American reservations in Minnesota and Arizona, both of which still lacked clean water. Elijah looked at her. You bring this to the Sheikh, he'll tear the firm in half. Maya nodded. Then we tear it. That night she scanned everything, labeled each file, built a master folder. She called it the Unseen Ledger. She uploaded 3 copies, one to Veronica, one to Amal, and one to a secure external legal channel that Elijah recommended. A former federal prosecutor turned compliance investigator. Then she waited. The next morning her inbox blinked with a single message from Veronica. Subject, this will burn the house. Body, are you ready? Maya typed back. Reply, it was already burning. We're just ringing the alarm. The boardroom was colder than usual. Not by temperature, by tone. The long mahogany table stretched like a fault line between the accused and the accusers. Maya sat calm but alert, her notes before her, the folder labeled The Unseen Ledger open to page 1. Veronica sat beside her, composed and bracing. Across the table sat the Sheikh, silent, still, watchful. To his right, Gulf partners with folded arms. To his left, American board members trying not to shift in their chairs. Their silence wasn't loyalty, it was self-preservation. Behind Maya, the projection screen lit up with a flowchart of financial transactions, each line a trail of betrayal. Veronica began. Your Excellency, today's presentation is not only about fraud, it's about betrayal, of partners, of communities, of purpose. She clicked. Slide 1. A ledger showing $23 million meant for environmental infrastructure. Slide 2. Transfer to Legacy Holdings. No project ID, no community engagement. One cleared his throat. We were told it was internal restructuring. Philip handled the language. You mean Philip handled the laundering? Veronica said. Slide 3. Email threads. Stamped. Archived. Undeniable. Maya stood. Attached is sworn testimony from Elijah Rowe. Original ledgers. Diversion instructions signed by Harold Covington. Traced payments routed through shell companies, all leading to fund starvation in Native communities. She paused. Children drinking contaminated water because someone wrote a euphemism into a spreadsheet. Covington's replacement, a junior counsel, tried to object. Miss Williams lacks formal legal authority. She has moral clarity, the Sheik interrupted. Maya looked at the table of powerful men and women. All of you signed off on these partnerships, but not all of you knew the truth. Some were misled. Others chose to look away. Slide 4. Email labeled, Neutralize Whistle Potential. Timestamped, forwarded by Covington. Sheikh Hassan leaned forward. Do either of you deny this evidence? He asked two seated board members who hadn't blinked once. One cleared his throat. We were told it was internal restructuring. Philip handled the language. You mean Philip handled the laundering, Veronica said. A pause. Long. Heavy. Then. Effective immediately, the Sheikh said. All regional projects connected to these accounts are frozen. Every beneficiary fund will be audited and repaid in full. And the board? Someone whispered. The Sheikh stood. This board will no longer be protected by silence. Anyone who knowingly benefited from these diversions will be investigated independently. He looked to Maya. Will you lead the oversight team? Maya didn't speak right away. She looked around. Then she nodded. Yes, but not alone. The Sheikh tilted his head. I want regional monitors, community members, external ethics partners. This isn't cleanup, it's redesign. A beat of stunned silence. Then, a slow clap. One of the Gulf partners. Then another. Maya sat back down. Later in the hallway, Veronica leaned in. You did it. Maya shook her head. We opened the first door, that's all. The office on the 18th floor wasn't much. Fluorescent lights, thin carpeting, a door that creaked, a coffee machine that coughed instead of brewed. But it had something the top floors never did. Truth. Veronica stood by the window, arms crossed, staring down at the streets below where protesters gathered again. This time not out of anger, but with demands for action. Placards read, Where did the billions go? Justice is not just paper. Maya stood beside a corkboard filled with sticky notes, regional maps, printed emails, and photos of the communities affected by the stolen funds. A reservation in Minnesota where pipelines were rerouted without consent. A Detroit district where water treatment plants were promised and never built. An Arizona clinic still waiting for the generator that was funded 5 years ago. These weren't just victims. They were now Maya's first priority. Amal and Angelina entered the room with folders stacked under their arms. 37 reports submitted, Amal said. 22 verified, 15 still waiting on field confirmation. Angelina added, Of the verified ones, 5 already show internal tampering. The money was never meant to go where the contract said it would. Maya pinched the bridge of her nose. And Zurich? Amal shook her head. Still running in circles. Legacy Holdings declared inactive. Cayman Bank stonewalling without subpoena. We need real oversight, Maya said. External, untouchable, and community-based. Veronica turned from the window. You're thinking what I'm thinking. Maya nodded. Regional ethics panels. Built from within the affected communities. Empowered to approve or freeze funding. They sign off on all final disbursements. And they're paid? Amal asked. They're paid, directly, transparently. Angelina opened her laptop. That'll piss off half the board. Maya smiled grimly. Good. That means we're doing it right. They spent the next 3 weeks building the framework. Every late night was fueled by stale tea and whiteboards. They wrote new policies from scratch, carving legal space into a system that had only known loopholes. They created workflows for whistleblower protection, real-time audit dashboards, AI-assisted contract flagging. When Maya presented the draft to the board, the room was silent. Then the Sheikh said, Implement it. No debate. No delay. Maya flew to Minnesota first. The reservation clinic director, a woman named Lila Two Rivers, met her at the airport. You're the one who found it? Lila asked. No, Maya replied. I'm the one who listened. They walked the empty generator lot together. Snow still covered the patch of ground where the power supply should have stood. We've buried 2 patients in 2 years because our fridges failed during outages, Lila said. If the money had come when it was promised. Maya didn't have words. She simply nodded, took notes, logged everything. By week's end, a new oversight hub was built inside the clinic itself. Two Rivers was made panel head, full financial control granted under new policy. She flew to Detroit next, then Arizona. Each stop hurt, but each one built something back. Maya no longer moved through boardrooms. She moved through neighborhoods, through flood zones and half-finished schools. She didn't wear heels now. She wore boots. And then one night in a small motel off I-80, she got the call. It was Veronica. "They're coming for you." Maya sat up. "Who?" "There are whispers. Executives who lost bonuses. Middlemen cut out of the laundering trails. One of them's behind a leak. They're painting you as an activist mole." Maya stayed silent. Veronica continued. "They've already fed it to a columnist. You'll be in print by morning, a hit piece. They're trying to undo your legitimacy." Maya exhaled. Let them try. She opened her laptop, began typing. "This is the system I entered. This is what I found. This is what we changed. And this is what we'll never allow again." She didn't ask for permission. She published it. By morning, it went viral. Her inbox flooded. Lawyers, lawmakers, mothers, students, activists, the Sheikh himself. One message stood out. "The fire they lit under you didn't burn you. It backlit you. Keep going. V." The sun hadn't risen yet, but Maya was already awake. Her motel window was cracked an inch, letting in the chill of a desert morning. She sipped lukewarm coffee, scrolling through headlines that now carried her name like a curse or a crown. The housekeeper who hacked the billionaires. Truth teller or Trojan horse. Maya Williams, savior or saboteur. Each article told a story, but none told the whole truth. She shut the laptop. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She almost let it go, but something made her answer. "Maya," a familiar voice said. "It's James." Her breath caught. "James? Montel?" "Yeah, Montel, former co-analyst, Abu Dhabi, the one who vanished 3 weeks before her resignation, after they both flagged a shady fund labeled Coastal Flood Control Initiative. She hadn't heard from him in nearly 4 years. "What the hell? Where have you—" "I've been off-grid," he said, "because I found something, and I couldn't stay inside the system." Maya sat on the edge of the bed. "Talk. I've got a file tied to Legacy Holdings, tied to Zurich, but it goes deeper. It predates Al-Rashid." She froze. "Predates?" "It's intergenerational. Parent firms, black budget partners, private equity arms set up after Gulf War oil contracts. This isn't just one company, Maya, it's a hydra." She ran her hand through her hair. "Why now?" "Because you're the only one who's made it this far alive, and because you already cracked the surface. I have the map." "Where are you?" "Brooklyn, off Atlantic, old record store, back alley access, no cameras." She arrived that night. The store was boarded up. A flickering neon sign hung by one wire. Groove and Needle. A steel door in the alley creaked open as she approached. James Montel looked older, leaner, paranoid, but his eyes still carried the fire of someone who couldn't stop searching. He led her inside. The place smelled of dust and secrets. He pulled out a USB drive and a stack of printed documents bound in black tape. "Legacy Holdings is just one name," he said. "They've had 12 aliases in 30 years. Different shells. Same beneficiaries." He flipped pages. Oil rights in post-conflict zones. Reconstruction contracts with inflated costs. Medical equipment billed but never shipped. And names. So many names. One hit her like a bullet. "Ellison Investments." Her voice cracked. "Veronica?" Montel shook his head. "No, her father, Stephen Ellison, former partner at Marrowgate Group, retired early, but his signature's on 3 oversight memos connected to Legacy's earliest subsidiaries." Maya's stomach turned. "Does she know?" "I don't think so. But if she does, she's been protecting you anyway." He slid the USB across the table. "This proves continuity. Same people, different faces. You bring this forward, You won't be fighting just Al-Rashid anymore. You'll be taking on a machine that existed before either of us got here. Maya stared at it. I'm not turning back. I didn't think you would. She returned to her motel at 2 a.m. and locked the door behind her. She backed up the drive in 3 places. Encrypted. Buried one in cloud, one on hardware, one printed. She sent a secure message to Veronica. We need to talk about your father and the origin story no one told you. There was no reply. At dawn, her motel phone rang. Receptionist's voice shook. There's a man downstairs, said he's FBI. Maya's spine stiffened. Did he show a badge? Yes, ma'am, but... He didn't sign in. Maya grabbed the files, shoved them into her backpack, and slipped out the back door. Because the worst kind of corruption doesn't knock. It hunts. Maya ran. Backpack tight on her shoulders, heartbeat hammering like a war drum. She ducked through the alley behind the motel, crossed through a gas station parking lot, and disappeared into the early morning blur of a city just beginning to wake. Coffee carts, joggers, and the low hum of morning traffic masking the storm chasing her. By 7:15 a.m., she was in a borrowed office above a closed dentist's clinic. The lights off, the blinds drawn. The USB was in the port. The documents from Montel's black file were spread across the floor in a chaotic mosaic. Decades of evidence, from boardroom minutes to classified memos, oil contracts, defense fund audits, and whispered collaborations between multinationals and war-torn regimes. And in the center of it all, a signature that matched one on a contract Maya had pulled 6 weeks ago. Stephen Ellison, Veronica's father. The man Maya owed her second chance to. Through his daughter. Maya stared at the documents, hands trembling. If she published this, if she exposed this, it wouldn't just fracture corporations, it would shatter legacies. At 9 a.m., she received a secure reply. Veronica, come to 74 Varick, private lot, back door, 1 hour. She almost didn't go, but she owed Veronica truth, even if it broke them both. She arrived in a rideshare under an alias. Veronica was waiting in a small room beneath a disused loading dock, hands in the pockets of her coat, staring at the concrete floor like it held her past. You found him, didn't you? Veronica asked without looking up. Yes. My father. Yes. Veronica nodded once. I knew, she said quietly. Not the full extent, but enough. Maya didn't speak. I tried to fix it from inside, Veronica said, but some things are built on rot, and rot spreads. Maya placed the USB on the table. This rewrites the entire structure. It links Al-Rashid to war profiteering, to community destruction. It makes Warren and Covington look like symptoms, not causes. Veronica looked at the USB, then at Maya. Are you prepared for what comes after this? No, Maya said honestly, but I am done being afraid. A long silence. Veronica reached into her coat and slid across a laminated ID. Press credentials, it had Maya's photo. Maya stared. What is this? I made a call, Veronica said. To a friend, ProPublica. They've seen the files. They want your story, unedited, full, live stream, tonight. You want me to go public? No, I want you to choose. Maya looked down at the ID. Will you stand with me? Veronica smiled, tired, but real. I'll stand behind you. That night, the stream went live. Maya sat in a small studio in Lower Manhattan. One camera, no script, just her and the truth. She told the story. From housekeeping trays to boardroom betrayals, from corporate sabotage to sovereign fraud, from Zurich to Arizona, from whispers to war. She read the names, the dates. She played clips. She showed contracts. She told the world. Then she said the last line, I didn't choose this fight, but I chose not to walk away. And you should ask why the people who stole everything are so afraid of someone like me. Someone with no power, no money, no name. Because maybe the truth doesn't need all that. Maybe it just needs someone to carry it. The stream ended. 24 million views in 3 hours, 3 federal subpoenas, 1 arrest. By morning, the financial press exploded. Multinational empire under criminal review. Former housekeeper brings billionaires to their knees. Whistleblower of the decade, Maya Williams. Al Rashid Capital dissolved 2 departments by week's end. The sheikh, silent at first, released a video statement. There is no honor in wealth gained by silence. I will cooperate fully with global investigations, and I thank Maya Williams for forcing our eyes open. 1 week later, Maya stood before a packed room at Columbia University. The audience was half policy students, half journalists. She wore no suit, just the same gray dress she wore the day she sat beside the sheikh and corrected his contract. I wasn't born to fight billionaires, she told them. I was just tired of watching people suffer because of paperwork written to confuse and control. Someone raised a hand. What now? Maya smiled. We rebuild. Veronica took the stage beside her. Starting with an independent agency for contract transparency, built by the same woman who saw the fine print others ignored. A week later, Maya received a letter, handwritten, from Lila Two Rivers. The generator arrived yesterday. First one we've had that didn't catch fire. The kids made signs that said, "Thank you, Maya." I told them no, thank the system that finally heard us. But they just said, yeah, we're thanking her anyway. Maya pinned it to her corkboard, next to a photo of her mother, next to her father's compass, next to a post-it that read, "Do right, even if you're alone."